This is Matt Lambert, and this is the Fort Worth Fly Fishers Podcast. Fort Worth Fly Fishers is a fly fishing club in Fort Worth, Texas, dedicated to the sport of fly fishing and open to anyone interested in fly fishing activities. Fort Worth Fly Fishers sponsors fishing experiences in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, education about fly fishing, and conservation activities to help ensure fly fishing activities and locations are available to the members and the community. Welcome to today's podcast with Barry Osborn to talk about fishing records and awards. Barry is a wildlife and fisheries biologist and the author of The Art of Fishing for Records. He has documented over 500 fishing records and awards for over 70 species of fish, including over 140 world records from multiple organizations. He has accumulated more Texas state records than anyone in history. Barry was the leading IGFA All-tackle Length Fly angler in 2021 and 2023. Recently, Barry became the fourth angler in history to document an IGFA Royal Bass Slam with a flyrod. Welcome, Barry.
Thanks, Matt. It's good to be here today.
Barry, we met a few years ago when you came to my garage sale looking for some fishing equipment. Unfortunately, we didn't have any there, but we struck up a conversation about your interest in fishing for records. And so far, I've had a chance to look at your book, and it's a great book talking about going about fishing for records, the number of records you've caught. And the interesting part of your book is that a lot of this is just because you wanted to.
That's correct. I really wrote the book not to make any money or anything, just so there'd be information out there on catching records. I was very surprised that there wasn't a book already written on the subject, but there's really not much out there, so it was kind of fun writing it.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I grew up in Arlington, Texas. I stayed in Texas most of my life. I moved out to Arizona to go to Arizona State. I got my bachelor's in wildlife biology there. Then I really am a Texan, so I moved back to Texas. I went to Texas A&M University and got my master's in wildlife and fisheries science. And I've been very fortunate in my work career. I've worked both in the private and public sector in wildlife my whole career.
What are some of the interesting things you've done as part of your work?
As far as work goes, I started out working on a big ranch. I was a wildlife biologist for the ranch. It was a hunting and fishing operation by an oil company. From there, I actually worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a little while. I worked for a private wildlife firm, and then I worked with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
That's quite an extensive background. So what got you started fishing for records?
Well, I was actually fishing in Port Mansfield, and I hooked a big jack crevalle. I was pulling the fish in. We were actually floating into the jetties. I had some motor problems, and I needed to get the kicker motor out. So I caught the fish very quickly, but when we pulled it on board, it was the biggest jack crevalle any of us have ever seen. I got a measuring tape out, measured the fish. It was 54 inches long, and it maxed out my 50-pound scale. But we were worried about the jetties. I just threw the fish back, got the motor running, got in, and that night I thought that was really a big fish. So I looked up the state record. The 1976 Texas state record is 52.25 inches and 50.25 pounds. So then I pulled out the IGFA record and looked it up, and the fish would not have beat the all-tackle record, but it would have beat the line class record for that fish. So I basically released a world record and state record fish and didn't have enough documentation to get it recorded.
You talk about the line record or the other aspects of the record. What makes the differences in records?
So there are quite a few differences in records. There's differences between the organizations. So there are records basically for rod and reel. You can get records for fly rods, you can get records for bows and arrows, or you can get unrestricted records like pole and line. You can even get spearfishing records and things like that.
What was your first state record?
So my first state record was actually a catch and release little toonie that I caught on a fly rod. So that's a part that Parks and Wildlife has for catch and release. It's based on length. My IGFA first world record was a 13-pound, 7-ounce smallmouth buffalo that I caught in Lake Granbury.
All right, so we do have some world records here in Lake Granbury.
We actually have quite a few world records now in Lake Granbury.
What a surprise. So, what is the biggest fish you've ever caught?
So the biggest fish I've ever caught is probably a shark. It probably weighed around 300 pounds.
Okay. Was that a record?
It was not a record. That was a fish I just caught and released, so it wasn't officially weighed, but that would be the biggest one I've caught. The biggest record I've caught, I actually caught a shark fishing without a reel, and it was 102 pounds. So that was a pretty big fish I caught without a reel.
It must have been quite a fight without a reel.
It was a fun fight without a reel.
Tell me about some of the state records you have.
Okay, I've got quite a few state records. Many of those are offshore. One of the things I enjoy doing is fishing offshore. So I've caught king mackerel on a fly rod. That's a state record. I've caught vermilion snapper, state records, cobia. One of the interesting state records that I caught was trying to catch red snapper. So I have figured out how to deep fish with a fly. I use fast sinking fly line, and I caught a state record red snapper, but then I decided I wanted to catch a world record red snapper also. The hard part about that is the IGFA only allows you to use 20-pound tippet. And that can be a big problem when you're fishing deep, because either you have to set the drag so light that the fish gets back in the rocks, or you tighten the drag too much and it's going to break off. So that day I literally probably hooked 30 fish before I got one in and got the all-tackle length fly world record on a red snapper.
What was the length of the fish and the weight on it?
The weight I didn't get because it was a length, so I was letting it go. And to be honest with you, I don't even know right now what the centimeters were. It's based on centimeters. It has actually been beat since then. So, but if you look up the length, it was only about 2 centimeters less than what's on there now.
And when was that?
That would have been probably 2 years ago.
Yeah, so very recent.
Yes. So just a couple of years ago.
Okay. What are the biggest records you have for fly rod?
So on a fly rod, I caught the kingfish on a fly rod as a state record. It was a fairly big fish. I would have to look up what the actual weight is in that fish, but it was a really big, about a 50-inch king mackerel.
Okay. Which do you prefer, freshwater or saltwater?
I really like both. I do a lot of fishing in freshwater. One interesting thing is I kind of gotten to the point in fishing for freshwater that I wasn't as interested in that type of fishing, and the records actually changed things so I could become more excited about going out and just catching smaller and different kind of fish in freshwater. I really enjoy fishing in saltwater. I like the blue water offshore, so I like fishing in both.
Okay. What's the most unusual record that you have?
So probably the most unusual record I have in Lake Granbury, I caught a fish that we originally thought was going to be a Midas cichlid. I got it tested, and it turned out to be a 3-spot cichlid hybrid. I brought the fish home. I kept it for a couple of years before I could get it DNA tested. But once I got the fish tested, we actually sent it off to the USGS, and the information that they used on that fish actually changed the scientific and genus name for the 3-spot cichlid hybrid. So there had been a big controversy about that, and the DNA from that particular fish changed that. One of the things, the fish got so big, couldn't keep it in an aquarium, and I donated that fish to the Dallas Children's Aquarium. So his name is Cheeto, and he is still over there if you want to go take a look at it.
Okay. I'm going to have to get my grandkids and go over there. I know that your wife has been your fishing companion for many, many years, and she also has a bunch of records. Tell me about her records.
So she does have a lot of records. She's caught world records. She caught the cod world record in Alaska that she had for a little while, a line class record. She's caught several records on different fish in Texas. She was actually the first woman to become the Texas freshwater and saltwater elite angler. She's caught some really big fish. She's caught tarpon, probably one of the biggest fish she caught. She caught the biggest black-tip shark I've ever seen. It was huge. It was just under 8 feet long. It was pregnant, and it would have really exceeded the existing state record. But since it was pregnant, she decided just to let it go. So she didn't get it. But the other thing interesting about Karen is I took her down to the lake one day and we were fly fishing, and she caught 7 carp between 10 and 15 pounds. The last one that she got in, she walked over and said, "I really don't like fly fishing as much as I do fishing with my Zebco." So she's not really big on fly fishing. The important thing about that to me is if you have someone that's not interested in fly fishing, let them fish with what they want to, especially if they're young anglers. They may become interested in fly fishing later, but you can still go out and have a good time without making that person do something that they're really not interested in.
The important thing is fishing, no matter what tackle you use.
I agree.
The difference between women's records and men's records. What are the availability of records for women these days?
Okay, so there are different organizations that give out records. And I will say at this point, the most important thing I'm going to say today is what a record is. Basically, a record is not the heaviest or longest fish ever caught. It's the heaviest or longest fish ever caught under the guidelines of a specific organization. So the first thing that you need to do is look at the organization and see what their guidelines are and what categories they have. So to answer your question about women, in Texas and with the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, which is an organization that does world records, there is no difference. But with the IGFA, they actually split men and women between line class and tippet class. So if you're a woman, you have a much better chance of setting a world record just from the fact that there's less women that are out there fishing, especially fly fishing. So a lot of those categories are open, or they're smaller fish than you'll find with men.
I know my wife is now going to be wanting to fish for records. She always tells me that she always catches bigger fish than I do. So I just have to accept that. I never measure them. I always accept her statements as truth.
Well, my wife catches a lot bigger fish than I do a lot of the time. So I wouldn't argue that point.
That's right. If someone wants to catch a record fish, what's the first thing to do?
So really the first thing to do is kind of what I said. You need to look at the guidelines of the organization that has the records. So I could really, the problem is that's a difficult question because I could do a week-long seminar to answer that. But, you mentioned my book earlier. If you're really into the tricks and details and things like that, I do recommend getting the book. It does have all the details with the art of fishing for records. And that's why I wrote that. But I'll try to give you the best summary I can. Once you realize that a fish is based on the guidelines, then you need to look at the organization. We are really blessed here in Texas because we have a really good record program compared to a lot of the other states. There's several different categories, and one of the things we have is water body records. And the water body records allow you to get a record for basically every named water body in the state. So there's over 3,000 lakes and rivers in Texas, and many of those don't have records at all. So you could go out and catch a fish of a half a pound, and you can actually get a record and get your name in the record books. If you want to go to some of the other organizations, the most well-known is the IGFA, the International Game Fish Association. That's normally what people think of when they think of world records. The IGFA has records for both freshwater and saltwater all over the world, but they are a rod and reel and fly fishing record organization. They don't have any records for any other types of fishing methods. One of the organizations I do like to use is called the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. They're out of Wisconsin, and they are freshwater world records, and they have several different categories. So they have rod and reel, they have fly rod, they have pole and line, but they also have ice fishing. So there's some other categories that you can get world records. or other organizations exist for world records. There is an organization that has bow fishing world records, for example, and there are some other organizations that will post records that are out there. So the main thing to do is to make sure that your equipment fits within the guidelines of the organization that you're trying to get the record with.
In terms of documenting records, what do you need to do to document a record if you think your fish is record worthy?
So each organization has their own form that you have to fill out. There is photography equipment is needed in all cases because all the organizations require you to take pictures. You want to get a picture of you holding the fish. It's a good idea if you can hold the rod and reel, you caught it on if possible. That's more important if you're fly fishing. You want to try to get the fly rod in the picture with you. You want to get a picture of the fish on a scale if you're measuring it where you can read the weight of the fish. You want to put the fish on a measuring board if it's a length record and make sure you can see the head of the fish and the tail so you can see how long that fish is. When you're doing that, make sure you don't have reflections or things so you can't read the weights. Make sure it's a good picture. Take several pictures and then throw out the ones that you don't need. You'll also need witnesses. Almost all the organizations require witnesses. That can either be witnesses to the catch, witnesses to the release alive, or it can be witnesses to the actual weighing. So witnesses are a good thing. And that's another thing. It's a good idea to fish with somebody if you're fishing for records. If you're by yourself, it's hard to get witnesses and some of those things. So that's something to keep in mind also. Records are based on two different types. There's weight records and then there's length records. Of course, weight records, you need to be able to weigh the fish. Most of the organizations require for that to be on a certified scale. And they may even, some states, for example, tell you that a state official has to be present during the weighing. Again, we're really lucky in Texas because any scale that is certified by a legitimate organization, they will accept. I personally carry two scales myself. I carry a 10-pound scale and a 330-pound scale that are both certified on an annual basis. As far as measuring goes, if it's a length record, you need a tape that you can use. Measuring boards are great because you can push the head of the fish up to the end of the board and you get a really accurate measurement. The thing you don't want to do is have a soft tape and measure along the contour of the body. That's called contour length, and it's actually longer than a normal total length where the tape's on the ground. So be careful about that because that can remove your record if you measure the fish that way. And also you need to know what measuring technique that each organization uses. So Texas Parks and Wildlife and the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, they actually use total length. So you put the fish on the measuring board and you can actually manipulate the tail to get the longest measurement. The IGFA, though, they use fork length. So, and if you use length measurements for world records with them, you actually have to buy their measuring device. They will not accept links on any other device except for theirs. So, and it's measured in centimeters for fork length.
So in other words, they're not going to accept that you didn't see the fish that got away.
That is correct.
Okay. How has how have the recent scandals with bass fishing tournaments and the scandals about putting lead weights in fish and everything affected the measurements of everything for records?
So basically, the record system is pretty much an honor system. The fact that you have to have pictures and witnesses and certified scales and you have to have notarization of the applications, all of those things help from people cheating. But the reality is, if you want to cheat, there's ways to cheat. I do know people that have posted records that were not caught within the guidelines and shouldn't have been on there, and that's unfortunate. Besides that, there's sometimes just mistakes. I mean, I know a couple of cases where as a biologist, the records are old and a biologist mistaked a hybrid striped bass for a white bass. So they posted this huge record that you're never going to catch a white bass bigger than that. So there can be cheating, there can be mistakes. One thing is if you're caught cheating, the organizations will remove all your records and they won't let you submit any records in the future. So it's better just to try to stay within the guidelines and make sure your records are all good. I mean, who would want a record they know they really didn't get it.
I know that I wouldn't want that, but I'm sure there are people who will.
Fortunately, I'm sure there are people that.
Yeah. What about fishing in fly fishing tournaments or contests? How does that affect catching records?
So you don't have to be in a contest to catch records. That's one really nice thing. If you are in a tournament or contest, some of the tournaments do allow for records to be caught during their tournament. One nice thing is there's usually witnesses available. They have certified scales that they're using, so it's actually pretty easy to document a record if you're in a tournament. But especially like in Texas, you don't have to be a member of an organization or do anything. Anyone can go out and catch a record at any given time. That's one really nice thing about records in Texas.
Just need to be lucky.
Need to be lucky or fish a lot.
Exactly. Well, both, really. Both. So, what about any special considerations you need to be aware of when you fish for records?
So really diversity is the key when you're fishing for records. If you're a bass angler and you want to go out and set the new all-tackle IGFA world record, you can do that. It's probably going to take you a little while to beat a fish that weighs 22 pounds and 4 ounces. That's a pretty big largemouth bass. So if you're after a largemouth bass all-tackle world record, you're going to have a lot of work to do. On the other hand, you can go over to Fort Worth to Greenbrier Park, and if you catch a fish that weighs half a pound, a largemouth bass, that will be the new water body record because that record is vacant. So there's a lot of vacant records. There's a lot of different record opportunities. And the main thing to do if you really want to catch records is try to decide what fish are available that you can go after to catch that record and be flexible.
I think that's really important. We just had a podcast where we had Dr. Cynthia Fox Holt from Fish and Wildlife here in Texas, who talked about she manages over 250 bodies of water in the Dallas, Tarrant, and Denton County areas. So obviously there's some records to be had locally.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's great. What about juniors or other populations? I know I would like if there was a senior class.
As far as I know, there are no senior classes. They could probably set that up, but there are differences. I mean, I've already mentioned for Texas and the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, there was no differences between men and women, but the IGFA, they do have differences between line class and tippet class for men and women. For junior anglers, Texas and the IGFA both have separate categories for junior anglers. One interesting thing is the IGFA just recently added a junior class for all of their line class and tippet class. So that's relatively new, and most of those are still open. So it's probably the best time ever for a junior angler to catch a world record right now. There are tons of records available. Also in Texas, there's a lot of junior angler records, many more than the adult records. Most of the lakes and water bodies do not have junior records that have documented the fish yet. So a junior angler can go out and actually catch a fish on almost any water body in Texas and get a record. Another interesting thing is adults, the fish has to be at least half a pound in Texas, but for junior anglers, it only has to be 2 ounces. So you can take your grandchild out to a lake, catch a little bitty bluegill, and if there's no record already there, you can turn that in and get a water body record for that junior angler.
How do they define junior angler?
So it's for Texas, it's under 16. The IGFA actually has different classes. So they have some small fry records, and you'll just have to go in and look at the age classes for those. But typically it's 17 and under.
Well, I'm going to have to take my grandkids out again and document everything so we can get some records on the books for them. I know you've been involved recently with a new type of record, the Royal Bass.
The Royal Slam?
The Royal Slam.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so the IGFA has the recognition that you can get for slams, and there's basically 2 types of slams. There's this kind of slam that you get, most people know about, called the Grand Slam, where you catch 3 fish in a single day. Actually, the Grand Slams, you can catch 3, 4, or 5 fish. So there's Grand Slams, Super Slams, and Fantasy Slams, and those are all fish caught in a single day. But the IGFA also has what they call Royal Slams, and Royal Slams are a group of fish. So like bass, for example, they have 8 bass on the list, and if you catch all 8 bass, you can get a Royal Slam. That's something that I've actually been interested in lately. The Royal Slam for bass, all of the bass are located in Texas except one. One of the bass, the rock bass, is in Texas. It's a little hard to find, but the one that's not in Texas is called the shoal bass. So my wife and I actually drove to Georgia to fish the Flint River to try to catch specifically shoal bass. We fished the first day. Neither one of us caught one, but the second day, both of us caught one on a rod and reel. And so that completed our Royal Slam. We caught all 8 fish that are on their list, all 8 bass, and that completed the slam. But I also wanted to do it with a fly rod. There were only 3 people listed for doing that with a fly rod, catching a Royal Slam with a fly. So I really wanted to catch one that day. The fishing had been pretty tough. I pulled out the fly rod. I made one cast and hooked a shoal bass on the first cast. So I got the fish in and got my shoal bass on a fly rod. I didn't complete my slam that day. I had to come back and catch a spotted bass on a fly. So I did that a few weeks later and completed my Royal Slam. But that's what those are.
So that's a new category for the IGFA, right?
So the slams have been around for a while. The new category is actually called the Master Angler category. And what that is it is a combination of multiple either slams or different types of records they have.
So when you say all tackle, what does that mean?
So all tackle is originally the all tackle meant that was the only one. It was the biggest fish ever caught on a rod and reel or a fly rod with the IGFA. Several years ago, they actually split out fly fishing, which was nice. So that you could actually now you can get an all tackle conventional fish record, world record, or you can get a fly all tackle world record. And they do have weight records and they do have length records. So you can get an all tackle length world record, or you can get an all tackle weight record.
Well, when I get home today, I'm going to talk to my wife about getting slammed.
That's a really fun thing to do, by the way.
That's great. So let's shift gear a little bit now, because again, going back to how we met, being at my garage sale, and you were looking for that, some fishing equipment as well as other things. Unfortunately, you didn't buy anything from me, but we did get rid of most of the stuff we were trying to get rid of at the garage sale.
Well, that's important.
That's important. You have told me in the past that you don't buy new equipment.
Well, that's mostly true. Most of the time I get my equipment either from secondhand organizations like eBay, or I buy a lot of equipment at garage sales and things like that. I started fly fishing when I was 9. And at that time, I didn't have any money. I actually bought my first fly tying kit off the back of a comic book. And so I bought that when I was 9 years old and got it home, and I used most of that material pretty fast. It was pretty cheap stuff, and I found that I could go into my mom's sewing kit and pull out some thread, and that worked just as good as the thread I had in the kit. So I would grab feathers from ducks or whatever I could, and I would tie flies. And the thing I found over the years is ugly flies catch fish. So if you don't have to have a beautiful fly tied in a certain pattern to go catch a fish. So I would go out and buy inexpensive equipment and tie inexpensive flies, and I would catch fish. I mean, one thing that's kind of funny is right now, most of my world and state records in freshwater have been set with a Freedom fly reel I bought on eBay for $1. And they're on a rod, a Browning or a Wright McGill rod that I bought for about $20. So I have about $21 invested in my freshwater fly fishing gear.
If only we all could, right? So how do you determine if what you're looking at a garage sale or on the eBay or any of the other places you might find used equipment? How do you determine if it's any good?
So you do need to pay a little bit of attention if you're buying stuff online. I personally like graphite for freshwater, so I buy graphite fly rods if I'm fishing in freshwater. For saltwater, I fish a fiberglass ugly stick most of the time. Really like those rods. You can find good information, good equipment out there on several different sources. I mean, I don't have any problem with going buying stuff from a retail store. If you have the money and you want to go out and spend thousands of dollars on rods and reels, go for it. I mean, there are some beautiful pieces of equipment out there. It's just for me, I buy a lot of equipment at garage sales. I redo it, I give it to kids and do things like that. So that's kind of the reason that I use those. The one thing I will say is on fly reels, I really only like center drag reels. I've torn up other reels quite a bit, and so I really go with those. My offshore fly reel, I fish in a Kuma SLB. It's an 11-12. The coating on the outside of the reel is almost gone. It's totally corroded, but the center drag is sealed and it still fishes beautifully. So if you want to be pretty, you can go out there and do that. If you want to just get something to fish with, you can also do that.
What's the best find you've ever come across?
Oh boy, that's a question I kind of hate because when I tell you what I find, people always tell me, "Well, I never find those kind of deals." But what you have to realize is my wife and I love going to garage and estate sale. So I go through hundreds of piles of old clothes and trash and junk to find a good sale. But to give you an example, I was in a garage sale the other day. I saw a fly vest sticking out of a pile of clothes. So I went over and picked up the vest and it was full. I looked a little bit more and there was another vest. So I held two vests up and said, "How much do you want for these?" And the lady said, $20 each, and I'll throw in that box of feathers. So I looked over to the side and there was a box there. I opened it up and it was full of fly tying stuff. So I just threw the two vests in on top of the box, didn't even look at them anymore, closed it up, gave her the $40. That night when I got home, I started sorting things out. There were 9 fly boxes inside the vest, and they were completely full of quality flies. There was over 350 flies. The box had some vices in it. It had fly tying equipment, scissors, it had feathers, it had tons of stuff in it. And in the vest in the back was a Kuma Helios fly reel that had never been used. It was spooled with fly line, backing, and new fly line. So I kind of roughly added everything up, and it would have been over $1,000 to buy at retail.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to go garage sailing with you. So obviously you're still fishing for records. What records are you still looking for?
So I am still fishing for records. This April, I set a freshwater fishing Hall of Fame tippet class world record for long-nosed gar while they were spawning this year. Last year, I set 10 state records, including I set the Bermuda chub state record on a fly, which is a fish I've been after for about 5 years. So I was really excited about that. I am concentrating on the slams, both the Royal Slams and the Grand Slams. I would like to knock the slams up to where I'm getting into that master angler program with multiple catches of the slams. Another thing that I'm doing is I actually planeur fish, which is a technique I developed a couple of decades ago, which is where you fish without a reel. So you just take a spool of line, you run the line through the rod, and you can do that with either conventional tackle or I do it fly fishing. So I basically just take the spool, throw it in a bucket, strip line on the ground, start fly fishing, and you just never have a reel. So you strip line to pull the fish back in, and you get the fish in that way without ever getting it onto the reel. The nice thing is the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, that's a different category for them. It's called pole and line. So I've set several world records fly fishing without a reel.
So you don't do canoodling?
Haven't tried canoodling, but I'm pretty much willing to do anything. It's I enjoy fishing in different methods and trying to figure things out. I mean, if you want to see the Planor fishing, I do have a YouTube channel. You can search on it. It's PLNOR. And if you look that up, I caught a stingray that way, and there's a video of that on there that's kind of interesting. It was a pretty nice stingray. Parks and Wildlife actually used to have that as a separate category. They've now made it an all-tackle category, so those records kind of got absorbed, but it's a lot of fun.
So what's the one fish on the bucket list?
Oh, wow. That is an interesting question. I would like to catch a bigmouth buffalo on a fly rod. I've done that once, and I would like to do that again. I would like to. I've held the carp fly all-tackle length record with IGFA, and I actually got beat this year. So I'll probably go back and try to do that. That's one of the things about records is people will beat your records. So you have a choice of either going back and trying to get them back or just go after different fish. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
What's your favorite fish?
If it's just fun, I really do like fishing for carp. Carp are probably the most underrated freshwater fish in the United States. They fight really hard. They're readily available. You can catch them on a fly rod. You can catch them on conventional tackle. So that's one of the fish that I really do enjoy catching. But then I do enjoy catching unique fish. There's a fish that on the Guadalupe River that I went down fishing there, and somebody said they were catching Guadalupe carp. I'm like, I'm not familiar with the Guadalupe carp. And I figured out it was actually a fish called a gray red horse, which is a fairly unique fish in Texas. I went down and set several world records on there, and I actually did even catch one with the fly rod. So that's the kind of fish that I do like to pursue.
Where do you like to fish in Texas?
Oh, wow. There are so many wonderful places to fish in Texas. I guess with lakes, I fish Texoma, I fish Whitney, Tawakoni, Granbury. Rivers and streams, the Guadalupe is a wonderful place to fish, especially fly fishing. The Red River is a really fun place to fly fish. I enjoy fishing there. Texas Parks and Wildlife, again, they have a great stocking program of trout in the wintertime. So you can look that up, and almost all the places they stock trout are fun to fish. That's great places in Texas. One of the things that people normally don't think about is residential ponds. There are some really good fishing in residential ponds in Texas if they're ponds that are open to the public where you can legally fish, and some of the parks. I like fishing the saltwater bays. Redfish Bay is fun. Lower Guru Madre is fun. And then, of course, I like fishing offshore. I usually go out of Port Mansfield or Port Aransas. But there are just anywhere in the state that you live, you can find a good place to fish in Texas.
That is one of the great things of Texas, is just the availability of fishing and hunting activities all over the state.
It really is.
Well, Barry, we've had a really good conversation today. I really appreciate your time and all the information that you've provided. Anything else you think you'd want our listeners to know?
The one program I would like to promote is called the Elite Angler Program. It's a Texas Parks and Wildlife program, and it's based on the length of a fish. So basically what it is, if you go to the Parks and Wildlife website and search on Elite, it'll come up, and you can search on the guidelines for the Big Fish Award. What you do, it's split between saltwater and freshwater, and every fish you catch of a certain length is posted on their site. You get a Big Fish Award. If you get 5 Big Fish Awards in either freshwater or saltwater, you become a Texas Elite Angler. And the nice thing about that is it's a permanent award. It's not like records where they can get replaced. Once you're on the list, you'll be a permanent Texas Elite Angler. It's a really fun thing to do because what it does is every time you're fishing, you have a chance to get one of these awards, and anybody can do it. I mean, for example, the white bass, it only has to be 15 inches long. You don't have to have certified scales. You just need a measuring device. You take a picture of you with the fish, a picture of a fish on the measuring tape. You fill out the Texas Parks and Wildlife form and send it in. You get your big fish award, do it 5 times in freshwater or saltwater, and then you get to be a Texas elite angler. I've enjoyed it so much. I've actually done the freshwater twice. So I've caught 10 fish instead of 5. And on the saltwater side, I've done 15 fish. So I've done it at 3 times. But that's a really, really fun program to look into. I think everybody should do that.
And you find that by looking on Texas Parks and Wildlife's website?
Yes, you go to their website, just in the search box, put elite, and it'll come up with the elite angler program. It shows you the lead anglers, and then there's a little section that says the guidelines, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do to get that.
Right. Well, something for all of us to look into. Well, again, Barry, thank you for your time today. Anything else that we should talk about?
I think that's it. I mean, the main thing is a lot of people think that there's no records available. The IGFA just this year, they had over 600 new world records. So there are a lot of records out there, and anyone can get a record. It takes a little bit of time and energy. I know there's some anglers that aren't interested in records at all, and that's fine. But if you are, don't feel like you can't get one. It really is readily available to anyone.
And you don't have to travel all over the world to get one.
You don't have to travel all over the world to get one. I set 11 in 1 year. I set 11 world records, most of them in Granbury.
Again, wow. I'm going fishing in Granbury. That's the key. So, well, Barry, thanks for your joining us today. And thanks to everyone for listening to the podcast today. If you are interested and you like the podcast, be sure to subscribe. If you're interested in joining our club or any of our club activities, check us out at fortworthflyfishers.org. Again, that's one word, fortworthflyfishers.org, or come to one of our meetings. We meet the first Tuesday of each month at the University of North Texas Health Sciences Center in Fort Worth, and on the first Tuesday at 7 o'clock in the evening. And if you're wanting to find directions to our meeting location, just go on our website and it's all located there. Stay tuned for our next podcast. Remember, Fort Worth Fly Fishers is a 501c3 organization responsible for all content provided. Keep fishing, and remember, fly fishing happens in beautiful places.